All right, I'm in. We got eyes, detective. All right, enhance. All right, let's go. Enhance again. What exactly are we looking at here, detective? The perk I have not seen in a long time. A long time. Awakened awareness. What happened to him, sir? Not what happened, but who happened. Wait. The nurse? Can't she blink through walls? How do we keep her in there? Wait. Son of a bitch. You're right. Everybody run! Hi guys, Bran here, and welcome to another commentary video. Today I wanted to talk about breaking bottlenecking, which I believe to be something that is an ulterior motive to why we've been seeing a lot of characters like Freddy most recently getting their updates to where one of the bottom 3, bottom 5 killers in the game are seemingly getting buffs. Obviously, Myers recently got moved out of bottom 3 with their quality life buffs that they got the last patch before that. It seems like there's a concerted effort from Behavior to try to mitigate the bottom 3, bottom 5 characters in the game, besides Skull Merchant, which they seem to be wanting to kick and take the lunch money of at any given point or any opportunity. They want to just make Skull Merchant mains miserable. But that is aside the point, because even Behavior themselves have admitted they don't like Skull Merchant, so they're not going to even necessarily stay that way for at least hopefully too long. But I believe, like I said, there's a greater reason for all this other than just making these characters who've historically been very weak actually playable now. You know, that is one benefit. That is one good benefit. But I do believe there's an alternative motive. Let's go ahead and get into that. Balancing anything, whether that be perks, maps, anything like that, it's extremely difficult when the power disparity between what a D tier in Dead by Daylight is and what an A tier in Dead by Daylight is. It's enormous. Like, it's night and day. Nurse's ability to just phase through walls compared to Skull Merchant, who has one beam that can barely affect the survivor, it's night and day. These could not be more polar opposites if they could be. And this creates a bottleneck where we have to somehow try to make maps or perks and design them in a way that somehow makes it worth using on Skull Merchant, but somehow isn't so good on Skull Merchant that somebody like Nurse, who just blows through matches, makes it super OP and has no counterplay whatsoever. Let's look at the comedic sketches focus, that being Awaken Awareness. Awaken Awareness, I'm guessing, is a perk that you even forgot existed up until I mentioned it just now. And there's a good reason for that, because Awaken Awareness is this perk that when you're carrying somebody, you get to see people around you. But the difference being that it used to have an extra effect in the PTB, which is that effect actually lingered for a couple seconds afterwards. This was taken away because when people were first messing around with Awaken Awareness, they found out that on Nurse this was extremely strong, because while they were carrying people by and noticing where people are, they could combine it with Starstruck and very quickly, just as a laser beam, just zoom straight to them, down them while they're exposed, because they knew through orbiting exactly where they were. So this is not this is a multi-layered problem. This created a whole multitude of issues, because obviously, with Awaken Awareness, with the aura reading, you can see where they are, and if they're exposed to Starstruck, and Nurse used to only hold her attacks with through M1s for some reason, which is thankfully no longer the case, they just created this like death build where you would run people by with agitation, see them with Awaken Awareness, teleport straight to them while they're exposed, instant down them, end the games far too quickly. It was a mess. It was terrible and it was awful. So as a result, Awaken Awareness lost its extra duration. So now you had to still guess at least where this person would be after you got done carrying the person, which sucks, because for every other character on the roster, this was not a problem. This was not an issue, but it got a part of the perk that was cool and neat taken away because we were so scared of what Nurse would do with it, or rather what she was doing with it. But even after we retroactively went and adjusted Nurse to make her attacks only M1, so the Starstruck thing wasn't even an issue, we never went back and adjusted Starstruck. We never went back and adjusted Awaken Awareness back ever again. It is permanently lost its extra 2 seconds that it got after you got done carrying somebody because of the damage that Nurse caused. So while Awaken Awareness was a fun and interesting perk and can be used by people in like the bottom 5, 10 in the game, just the fact that the top 3, specifically Nurse, was creating such extreme issues with it, it had the ability to bottleneck us and have an extremely cool aspect of the perk taken away for seemingly no reason, just to make sure Nurse could play nice. My point being is that this goes both ways. We can't create really strong meta-defining perks for Killer, because if something really slows down the game and keeps the gen slow for somebody like Skull Merchant, like old Freddy, that's great. That's awesome. But in the hands of a Nurse, a Blight, a Billy, a Dracula, it becomes a nightmare because those killers end up using them to ad nauseum and absolutely just bulldozing their matches, and it becomes a massive problem, and then they get nerfed as a result. Whereas on somebody like Trapper, like Old Freddy, like School Merchant, some of these characters desperately need some sort of powerful slowdown like that in order to be able to stand a chance. I'm sure you guys have run into games where you just want to be chill, you want to be that chill guy, and you only want to run 1 or 2 slowdown, and you just absolutely blasted. So these characters that desperately need some sort of like really big strong perk to kind of like edge out the fact that their kit is so unnecessarily weak, they can't even have that tool, because when in the hands of a high tier of a top 3-5 character, it just bulldozes the survivors, and then it creates a problem on that end. So realistically, the only way we can have like fun, interesting perks is if there's less of power disparity between the top and the bottom of Dead by Daylight. So I feel like one of the ulterior motives behavior has for buffing the bottom 5-10 characters in the game, like they've been doing over time, is that way this power disparity is not as steep. When they will start addressing characters like Nurse, like Blight, like Billy again, they tried to nerf Billy slightly, but that was more of like a reaction nerf to like the changes they had already made. When they're going to start looking at those characters, I'm not sure. I guess that's where I'll see if my theory actually pans out, because obviously if they don't end up doing that, that's not the point. They're just trying to make people play the bottom characters more at that point then. But I think an overall, a bigger brain idea would be to try and bring the top down a little bit, bring the bottom up some more. That way we can have a more general idea of what kind of maps are a game. Let's look at maps here just for a second with a great example. Let's take the example of the game, the Meatpacking Plant. It's a map with just an incredibly absurd amount of pallets, just everywhere, all over the place. There's only like 2 or 3 windows. There's like a handful, but there's only like 2 or 3 that are usable. But to someone like Nurse, Gideon doesn't really matter. Even to a lot of like the upper tier killers, like Dracula, like Xenomorph, like you just hit over the pallet, right? Like most pallets you can hit over or around. There's some god pallets here and there, but a lot of the loops are like waist high, and even though there's a lot of them, you can typically hit over or around the loop somehow with most of these characters. Pyramid Head, another great example. Pyramid Head, you could just, you know, ride to judgment through even objects, doesn't even have to be over them, just goes under them. So a map like the Gideon Meatpacking Plant suddenly becomes a lot more manageable because of the abilities that killers have, whereas on a character like Myers, Old Freddy, Trapper, suddenly these maps become nightmares, because just suddenly a ton of pallets with no way to realistically get around them is a major issue, and it's a major problem, whereas it's not for a great deal of the roster. But if these characters on the bottom have more of an ability to make a difference, and the characters that are so high up can't make a difference so easy breezy, we can start designing maps around a general killer strength that is somewhere in just like a general A, B tier zone, because most characters will be A or B. There won't be a lot of S's, there won't be a lot of C and D's. The lowest will probably be C tier. And that way we can finally start making maps that are fair for both. We don't need to make maps like Garden of Joy or Eerie of Crows that are so strong that it accounts for the top 3 or 5 killers in the game, but then we don't have to make these like big dead zone maps like Haddonfield, where it feels like they're made exclusively so M1 killers in the bottom 3 or 5 can stand a chance. Whereas like if you're even slightly strong and you're on Haddonfield, it feels like you just kind of like bulldoze the survivors. And it gives us a better idea of what a map in Dead by Daylight should look like, because we're not having to cater to such a vast difference between the character levels. I will say as well, before we end off here, that this goes for the survivor side of things too. The way that a 4-man Swift abuses perks keeps them out of the hands of the average survivor population, and it keeps your meta boring. I think that's honestly one of the biggest things I see from modern survivor mainstreamers that I watch, is they're just kind of bored of the meta, because it's the same like 5 to 10 perks that they've always been running forever, and they're just always slotted in their build, and they're running the same stuff over and over and over again. And I feel like a lot of that is, once again, because the power disparity between solo queue and 4-man Swift on cons is just so vast that it's hard for them to make a perk that won't be abused by the 4-man, but is still somehow useful and will help the solo queue player stand a chance. I think at the end of the day, it's one of Dead by Daylight's greatest flaws, is that whether it be a perk or a map, it has to be strong enough so that the weakest people can take advantage of it to stand a chance. But that same tool used in the hand of whether that be the 4-man Swift or like a top 3 killer suddenly becomes absurdly busted, absurdly strong, and we can't have it be strong. We gotta nerf it. And it's just like, we're gonna be fighting this fight forever until we start bringing everybody down to like a general level of impact on the game. At least with maps we can do this. I know that a very brief aside is that, of course, you know, if I'm looking at the company of behavior, realistically, perks being super unbalanced and super crazy is kind of what makes them their money, really, right? If a perk is super absurdly strong and breaks the game, even if it's only for like a patch or two, they make their money on it, right? They just do. Like, people want to buy strong stuff that helps them win games. That's just how it goes. So realistically, there's not a whole lot of incentive to really do that on the perk side of things, because that would probably hurt the bottom line. For maps, nobody has to buy maps. Maps just go into the game. So this just benefits them no matter what for the map side of things. But for the perk side, there's something to be said for the fact that they intrinsically benefit from perks being unbalanced, which I don't think is a good thing. I think perks by daylight is not great, not fantastic, and I think it's one of the things that makes the game feel bad when you get out perked and not actually outplayed. So all in all, I think that a lot of the efforts behavior has made recently to try and bring up the bottom 3 or 5 killers in the game are an effort to slowly break the bottleneck that the game experiences with the power disparity between the highest killers and the lowest killers. And that will eventually allow us to have more fair and fun perks and more fair and fun map design, because we don't have to design for somebody as weak as Freddy and somebody as strong as Nurse at the exact same time. And overall, I feel like I would love to see this continue to be worked on the Survivor side as well, with more solo queue improvements, and also maybe some ways we can stop the 4-man Swift comms situation from being so OP as well. Yeah, what do you guys think? Do you think bottlenecking is an extreme issue in Dead by Daylight, or do you think it's not as bad as I'm saying it is? Let me know down in the comments below. But that's going to be it for today's video, friends. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Hopefully I made your day a little bit better. If I did not, well, I have a chance to do it again in the next video. So I'll see you then. But if I do not, I'll see you when I see you. Goodbye.